on this call. Okay. Okay, assalamu alaikum one more time, and this is the second lecture in this class of Introduction to Thinking. Yesterday in the previous lecture, lecture 1, we talked about this history of the issue of thinking, how thinking was perceived by different scholars, especially in the Muslim world. And before that, in the Greek era, I did not talk about it, but eventually it will come as we discuss various issues here. But and last time we had the summary of Muslims definition. We mentioned that the Muslim scholars, which we counted many of them, like Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, Al-Muhtasibi, Al-Juwayni, Ja'far bin Qudama, and who else? Al-Razi and Al-Ghazali. Now, by the way, I just want to mention that the fact that they did not arrive at the proper definition of what the mind is. However, to say the least, they were able to produce a vast amount, very large amount of, or a wealth of knowledge, especially in the Ahkam Shari'iyya and the Shara, and they were absolutely good at it. But remember, they were very much obligated within the boundaries of Ahkam Shari'iyya, so they needed a specific understanding. If the definition comes from the Hukum Shari, then definitely you will find like Imam Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, Ahmad bin Hanbal, and the rest, they were absolutely superb and excellent at that. However, this issue, which is not directly emitted or produced from a particular dalil, although it can be produced from a collection of dalils from different areas, as we will see how you can do that. But the bottom line is they have come up with whatever they have come up with. The closest they came up to is that it's an instinct, which is, of course, instincts are different than mind. Instincts have the ability to distinguish between objects or between things, but only if it's related to instinct, as we will discuss later, inshallah. Okay, now let me just, I want to do one technical issue before I proceed. Okay. Okay. Now, on the other side, other than the Islamic scholars or the Muslims, what they were able to come up with, let me talk about two attempts also, different types of attempts from coming from a different perspective altogether, which is here. So there is a theory of mind, theory of what mind is, by two philosophers, famous, well-known philosophers. One is Hegel and the other is Marx. Both are Germans. Like Hegel, he's a philosophy of mind, was born in 1894, and he's from Germany. And Marx, who is his main book, he has several books, but the main one is called Capital, and Capital is the one that in which it's a big encyclopedia and comes in 6 large volumes that talks about all types of things about dialectic materialism, historic materialism, the function of the mind, and the way to derive ideas and to extract ideas. Very interesting. And those two, they have this model, which I would call it one is the reverse of the other. But for historical reasons, we start with this one on the left-hand side, which is the Hegel, this model, because he lived before Marx, and Marx came around 100 years after Hegel. So Marx has actually borrowed this theory about mind, or what we call the aql, or the reasoning facility. And he reversed that. So let me show how he did it. Let me go into the next slide. This is what Hegel did in his work called The Theory of Mind. And I call the Hegel Fallacy. It's his actually, he has big flaw in his model and big mistake. But anyway, for those who want to familiarize themselves with these philosophers, Hegel is, again, he's a German philosopher, born in 1770, died 1831. His main themes were rationalism and absolute idealism. Now, idealism, by the way, is the opposite of materialism. Idealism is the opposite of materialism. Materialism is what Marx had composed and came up with the communist theory or the communist ideology based on materialism. Hegel, he talked about idealism, and so he's well known to be the father of idealism, which is the ideological base for origin of democracy and capitalism. Now, although democracy and capitalism, especially capitalism, was created, or at least the foundations of capitalism as an economic system was made by Adam Smith almost about 50 years before Hegel. That's where Adam Smith was born in 1723. Between 1770, by the time Hegel was mature, Adam Smith was already out of this world. So, but nevertheless, Hegel came with the idea of the reasoning of idealism, and idealism was based, actually, was the whole theory or the whole ideology of idealism was based on his definition of what mind is. It's very interesting. See, that's why I kept saying the definition of mind, to understand what mind is, can actually produce a whole set of ideas and thoughts. Eventually it comes as an ideology. So here is what Hegel says in a nutshell, before I go into graphs and diagrams. What he says is that ideas and thoughts, they do exist in the brain somehow, and what the brain, with the thoughts the brain has, and the information and all the ideas, when he looks at reality outside, you will be able to explain the reality and pass judgment on them based on what he has in his brain. That's the basic theme that he had. And later on, Marx claimed that this whole idea of idealism is that you have an ideal view of the world, and from this ideal view you can explain things around. So if the ideal view in your world, in your own world, or in your own brain, is that the world shall have, or the world should have a very large wealth, then your brain is going to function in a manner that will produce wealth. In fact, some philosophers, the recent philosophers, they or even poets like Al-Khayyam, or like Gibran from Lebanon, they used to say, if in your brain you have images of beauty, let's say you have a beautiful view in your brain, then you are going to see everything around you are beautiful. So that's the idea of idealism. Now, when he came, he wanted to explain that and prove it. He said, look, here is a matter, which is the object around me. That's the world around me. That's the trees, the mountains, the people, the cars, the objects, all over me. And here is my brain. Now, what my brain will do will pass a reflection, will actually shed some type of light from my brain into this matter. And then the feedback coming from the matter is going to reflect on my brain. And then I will have a thought. So his explanation of the mind, he says, this is the reflection of brain on a matter, and the counter reflection that comes from matter to the brain, that's what the mind is. That's the mental process. So what now the interesting thing here, which is the new thing, is that Hegel was able to realize that mind, this concept of mind, includes the brain, but it's not the brain. Includes the objects around us, but it's not the object. Includes information that's in the brain, but it's not the information. It is this process of the ideas and information in the brain being reflected here with this type of the green arrow, which I have being reflected in the matter, and then a feedback comes back from the matter to the brain. Now, he did not talk about senses, or he did not talk about any other, he did not explain how does the brain actually shed light or radiate to the matter. He didn't even go there. He assumed, and that's a big assumption because it doesn't have a proof. He assumed that the brain reflects whatever it has, as I just mentioned, poets like Gibran Khalil, when they say woman يكو جميلا يرى الوجود جميلا, or كن جميلا ترى الوجود جميلا, be a beautiful, or have a beauty in your brain, you will see the world around you beautiful. Have some dark images in your brain, then you will see everything is dark, which is not really true. That's not really true. It's not the fact that I have everything in my brain is bright and nice, therefore I see everything out is nice. And if I do so, then I would be misjudging, because sometimes the one who comes to me in a very beautiful suit might have the gun under his suit and kill me. So then what is the beauty here? So it doesn't take a brainer to realize that the truth of the matter that the brain does not radiate and does not reflect on objects, and the objects do not reflect back. But even though this idea is not sound, upon which this issue upon this idea, the idealism, where is this okay, here. This idealism was created and it became as an ideology. So that's why in the Western mentality, which is based on the Hegel type of theory, first they create an image of the world. You would like to see that the world is your colonies, and then you create the armies, you build all your troops so that you can colonize the rest of the world. So this becomes an initial thought they create, and then they go on and try to build it. That's the whole idea of Hegel about mind, which, let me just do this here, okay? So that's his definition, is that the mind has two major components, the brain and reality. And the mind is the reflection of ideas in the on the matter to generate new ideas. So that's how new ideas, how new thoughts are generated. I use my own thought. My own thought sees a new object or a new matter or a new something new reality, with my original idea is approaching the object, a new idea is generated. And this whole cycle is called the mind according to Hegel. So it's a failed attempt, as I already mentioned. Why? Because the brain does not reflect nor radiates. It's a fallacy. It's an assumption which is not true. And of course, did not include the necessity of information to explain the reality. He just mentioned that the fact that my ideas reflect on matter, and the matter with this reflection comes back a new thought. Now, he did not even talk about processing these ideas and how they get processed and where they get processed in order to generate ideas. So it's still very vague. In fact, if I go back to the Muslim scholars, whom we said their definition was not accurate, they were way beyond what they have said. Okay, I see that brother Sheikh Mohammad is raising his hand. Do you want to say anything, brother, before I proceed?
Yeah, Sheikh. I have one question. Yeah, you said that in Hegel theory, the person is having some original ideas, right? You are telling that it is a previous information.
Yeah,
is it a previous information?
It is previously in the brain. He never said where it came from at the very beginning. So he did not go as far as, because previous information with the way he, now I think you are hitting on a point. Says, okay, this is my brain. I have some small pieces of ideas here or information. With this one here moves and hits an object. Let's say, no, not like this. I'll take this one. Okay, so this piece of information hits an object. This object now responds to the brain with a new idea. So this one generates a new idea. This is the new idea generated. Now, okay, he never said or thought it's important to explain where this first idea came from. There was a time, at the very time, even if we go with him and Darwin, this Darwinism was big at that time. There was a time when evolution took place, which we do not believe in evolution, but let's assume for a second. Now, this first man on Earth, where did he get this first piece of information? He never explained that or even touched on that, because he assumed that humans by nature, they do have ideas and thoughts a prior. But that's the way he approached it. So he did not deny the need for this information, the existence, but he did not show the correlation between objects and information, because I may have an information which is absolutely not related to this object. Let's say this object is a cow, and this is the first time I see a cow in my life. So how am I going to my idea, which I hit the cow with, and to get reflected so that I can come to a conclusion that cow can be useful, or cow can become a god to be worshipped like the Hindus, or a cow can be useful for cultivating the land. He could not explain that. He did not even touch that, and that's part of the fallacy of his theory. So however, despite this issue, here, if my this red box, if you can see that, let me move it somewhere here, so we can see it, and let me increase the fonts a little bit. So the impact is that reality is explained and understood based on previous mindset. Okay, so this is your previous mindset, according to him, will determine the new ideas. And that's very, very dangerous, because that's what we call bias. And in some of my lectures, especially when I talk about the systems, economic system or economic justice, there's a lecture I had, economic justice in Islam, because one of the main reasons of injustice is the previous bias that you may have. If I have a bias against color, against blacks or whites or Indians or Pakistanis or Arabs or Persians or Europeans, if that bias is there, then there is no way in the world I'm going to be just. In fact, I will be unjust, and I will produce injustice the moment I start thinking about the issue, because of my previous mindset. And according to Hegel and Hegel's theory, mindset or previous mindset is the main item that produces a new ideas or thoughts. So if I'm going to produce a new law, the thought is a law, could be a law, could be a rule, could be a judgment. So this law is going to emanate or to come from my mindset. And that's the biggest impact his theory had on the life of people. And that's no wonder why under idealism, which is the theory brought by Hegel, and capitalistic theory in general, which was formulated, and democracy, which was formulated together with his ideas, they were all based on this issue of previous mindset is what generates new ideas by simply interacting with the now interacting, actually I'm making it much more sounds better for him. He never said it's interact, he said it's a reflection. And they were obsessed by the material of physics about the reflections and diffractions of light. So he used reflection the same as Marx, as I will explain in a second. So this is one. And the second one says, which I already mentioned, generates biased conclusions. So that's the natural outcome of or the impact that Hegel had on society. So from his time on, from when the philosophy became so so important and carried by countries, by people who loved that, because it allows them to determine the view of the world based on a previous mindset that they had. So, and that's what, because today, if I want to explain why there is a very large injustice in the world, where does this injustice comes from? I said, look, usually it comes from a bias. Where does the bias come from? It comes from the mindset. How did the world get into this mess? It's there. It's right here. This is your guy. This is our guy. This is the guy that who made all of this mess in the world, and he continues to be appreciated until today. All types of philosophers, they refer to the idealism of Hegel. Now, having said that, almost less than 100 years later, in 1770, so this guy came Hegel 1770. This is, Marx. No, I think I repeated the same time, that's wrong. Marx came at this guy Hegel, what is it? Hegel came 1723. No, that's Adam Smith. I have a mistake here. Somebody probably can look up the in the Wikipedia the time frame of Hegel and Marx. I think I have one of them is, I think Hegel is correct, but Marx is